Emil Smith-Rowe bursting into the box, and that is a wonderful finish from Emil Smith-Rowe. It's his first goal in a Fulham shirt, certainly at Premier League level. It's the first of many, and look at the smile on his face. That's a quality goal from a quality player.
Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. We are back, and today we're going to be previewing the Brentford game Monday night under lights at the Cottage. A huge derby with Fulham currently in up and down form. Brentford kind of the same as well. Here to talk it all through, we have, as always, Elton. How are we going, Dad?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm really very well and happy to be here, and kind of a bit disappointed that we haven't got a game on Saturday, but maybe that gives my nerves and sympathetic nervous system a chance to settle down before Tuesday for us.
Yeah, I was going to say these games under lights are wonderful if you're in the right time zone. Unfortunately, the 4 a.m. kickoff is going to be a pretty rough one, but for those horse racing fans, it is Melbourne Cup the next day, so I think a few people have a bit of time to recover, which would be quite nice. Also joining us for the first time today, we have Nick. How are we, Nick? Good to have you on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me on. I'm doing well, thank you. Yeah, excited for this next game coming up. It's good to have a little bit of a rest, I guess, this next weekend after last game, but definitely looking forward to it.
Awesome. Nick, what I'll do, just to sort of introduce yourself to all of our listeners, it'd be great if you could just give us a bit of background on yourself and your Fulham story, how you came to support Fulham.
Yeah, of course. So I grew up in Fulham. My entire life, I've been supporting the club while still being the only Fulham and actual football supporter in my household. So growing up, it was always me trying to go to games and trying to find friends who were also Fulham supporters, and whichever neighbours had extra tickets or something like that. But I really sort of grew up around the club and grew up in the area to the point where I could open up my bedroom window and sort of hear the stadium noise when I couldn't go to games and still follow along with what was happening. So, yeah, no, the club means a lot to me. It's meant a lot to me for a long time. I'm just happy I can now get more engaged in it with you guys.
Yeah, awesome stuff. So, yeah, a lot of people obviously living in the area who end up being fans. And look, it's great as well that we've been able to get you onto the podcast, and it's a great segue into the That's So Craven Discord, which Nick is a big member of. A really good place, a good community for people to be able to talk all things Fulham. Removes quite a lot of the noise, I find, that you get on Twitter. So if you're looking for a place where you can talk just Fulham, it's a really good spot. Nick, you're obviously been part of the Discord for a while. You know, we always talk about how great the Discord is because it's ours, but as someone who joined the Discord and has interacted with a lot of different people there, what's the benefits, I guess, for you of being part of that community?
Well, the main benefit is that I actually stay connected to the club. I'm currently studying abroad, so I'm not in the UK at the moment. So it's difficult to find any Fulham fans around here. So it definitely helps me stay connected to the club, stay involved in sort of everything that's going on, and sort of deepen my knowledge and understanding of everything.
Yeah, I know, 100% agree. And as overseas fans ourselves, I find it's just a good place to be able to meet like-minded Fulham fans who just want to talk all things Fulham all the time. Being able to see some of that stuff coming through, and you know, from Fulham Fan News, from Cottage Tactico, some of the big hitters in the Fulham community, if you will. It's a really great community and a really great place to just talk Fulham. So yeah, please do check it out. You can find all the links in our Twitter bio. Everywhere that we are online, you'll be able to find a link to the Discord. So it's never too late to join up. Just remember that. Let's jump in to talk about the previous game, a 1-1 draw with Everton. Dad, I'll throw to you first. It's been a little while since the game now. Obviously incredibly disappointing at the time, but how are we feeling a couple of days afterwards?
Well, still incredibly disappointed, funnily enough. But like everyone, you know, you kind of need to pick yourself up and move on and focus on the next one. These things, it's a long season and you can't dwell on what could have been, I think the themes of why it all went wrong will be of no surprise to Marco. Probably just more frustration, really, that the same themes seem to be reoccurring. I've got, yes, I don't think he'd be scratching his head as to how we can do better. I think he will just be frustrated that we don't seem to be able to do better. And it's definitely something that we need to tidy up, because this will become costly for us from a points perspective. I did read somewhere, I can't remember where it was, could it have been Iwobi or someone who mentioned that they were a bit down in the camp after the game on Saturday, or after the result, and that, Silva was trying to inject some enthusiasm and focus for them to get back up for the next game. So I think it's probably a lot easier for players and the team itself, which is a microcosm in a cocooned environment, for them to get back to training and get into the just get into back to work, really, than it is for fans who are still left with the imprint on their memory and the disappointment and the frustration. You don't get to work through it like they do, and I think there's probably more optimism in the camp than we feel.
Yeah, Nick, obviously we didn't get your chance to hear your thoughts on the Everton game. I guess sum up your feelings after that game and after yet another very late equaliser.
I mean, you say it right there, another late equaliser. I think it's just something where it's frustrating at this point, where we've seen this happen multiple times, where it gets to the very late stages of the game. We're talking 90 plus here, and we switch off, or there's just a break in the line in the very last moments and we concede. So I think it's frustrating as a fan. I get that, it must be even more frustrating as a player when you're on the pitch and you're this close to pulling out 3 points just to be robbed of 2 by a mistake. But I think that the sort of longer week now ahead can give them some time to refocus in on the next game and make sure that they're going into it with the right mindset and just attack it. Also helps that it's a derby.
Yeah, I think you mentioned time there, and I think that's important. I don't think the rest as much is as important, like physically, but just the time to be able to sit down with Marco. I guess after a game like that, they probably have an extra day off, maybe because we're not playing again until Monday night. You have time to sit down and really work through what's going wrong, because it's obvious that there's an underlying issue there where we concede late in games and we seem to switch off. Marco's got a chance now to sit down with the whole squad and work it out as a group. And I think that's important. And like you say, going into the game against Brentford being a derby is actually, I think, coming at a very good time for us, because we kind of need a little boost and a little kick. And I think when you have a disappointing result like that, it can be easy to sort of switch off and be overly disappointed and struggle to get into the next game. But when you play against a team like Brentford coming up, there's no chance that we're going to be switched off and not putting our all into that. So I think it actually comes at a pretty good time, this result. But there's obviously work to be done, and it's something that I'm sure we're going to be focusing on during the week training before the game. So the game itself, Monday night under lights against Brentford. Nick, your thoughts on Brentford so far this season? They're currently sitting just above us in the table. They're in the news a fair bit, I guess, for constantly scoring early in games. In the first minute, I think, could be 4 games in a row this season. How do you think they've actually fared so far this season?
Well, I had a look at it before coming on, and sort of the stats of their recent games, and they're sort of level with us in the way that we're scoring about 1.3 or whatever goals it is a game and conceding the same amount, and they're scoring about 2 goals a game and conceding about the same amount. So we're both on 0 goal difference. So this whole thing of they are, this great team because their scoring is just negated because they're letting in the same amount of goals as they're scoring. But they do have one weapon, which even I, as a Fulham fan, will have to say is absolutely world class, and Mbeumo, who might cause us some problems come Monday. But apart from that, they played well. They've played a lot of attacking football. But then on the flip side, when you talk about all these goals, 5 of them came from just that Wolves game. So we'll see how attacking and how scoring they'll actually end up being against us.
Yeah. Dad, Nick makes a good point there. Brian Mbeumo probably the biggest threat from Brentford, and they do score goals. With the return of Joachim Andersen, do we feel like this defence is probably better set up to actually deal with that attacking threat now?
Yes, obviously. And, to just quickly link back to the Everton game, make no mistake that Anderson last week was a big miss. And his absence in those last 4 minutes, I think, can't be discounted either. So Anderson is calm. He's very well organised. And I think he brings all of that to our defences. So, look, Mbeumo is nothing new. He's always been a difficult customer for us over the last couple of years. And I know he's in really good form at the moment, but he's always a handful. So I don't see anything really different there. It's nothing new. And I'm sure we will have a plan for him. I think there's a lot going on for Fulham at the moment, and I always sort of think about these derby games where the fans seem to get incredibly pumped for it. But I wonder whether the teams and the club get pumped in the same way. For them, it's just another team, surely. I know they're down the road and there's lots of beef between Fulham fans and Brentford fans, but I wonder whether, it's actually more in our heads than ever in their heads, unless it's a really, really big club, like maybe Chelsea or something like that. Yeah, do you really think that? Do you think that Brentford represent this absolute massive prize to the Fulham team?
Well, no, I don't think. I mean, it's a rivalry, but I wouldn't call it the biggest of rivalries. I think if you're looking at scalps that Fulham want to take in terms of local neighbours, Chelsea's the top one easily, and I'd say probably QPR is actually more of a rivalry than the Brentford rivalry. And I do agree with you there in a way, because like you say, the majority of Fulham players, if not all Fulham players, aren't actually Fulham fans, and so they don't intrinsically hate Brentford. And I think actually what happens is you get the players get caught up in the fever of the fans on the sidelines, because it is a slightly different atmosphere in a derby game.
Yeah,
let's be honest. There's more noise. There's more booing for the opposition, more baying for blood, and the players would pick up on that. And the players also, I know it's their job to go out there and play football, but they want to entertain and they want to give back to the fans. I'm hopeful at least that that's the case, but I'm pretty sure they want to give back to the fans. And I think they understand how important it is for the fans to get victories over your rival.
Absolutely.
And so I do think that gives a bit of a boost when you're out there. But Nick, you raised a good point about goal difference so far this season. Both teams on 0 goal difference, but Brentford scoring 2 goals a game and conceding 2 goals a game. Fulham at 1.2 or 1.3, whatever it was. Which position would you rather be in? Would you rather be scoring a lot of goals but also conceding? Or would you rather be in our position where we're not scoring, we're still scoring, but maybe not quite as many, but we're a little bit more defensively sound? And additionally, which do you think is easier to actually deal with and fix in the long run?
Well, I'd rather be in the position we are. Of course, you love scoring goals. You love seeing a higher score line for your team. But, letting in goals at the same time, you're really depleting the squad, and then you're fighting constantly to get it back. If you have a solid defensive unit, then you're closing out games a lot better, hopefully. And then chances will still come when you move forward. and build out of the defense rather than if you're just having the goalkeeper kick it up wide and far and hoping that someone gets on the end of it. That then leaves a lot more to go. But what can be fixed more easily? I would say rather the other way. So if you're scoring a lot of goals, getting in a defensive unit, maybe changing up the tactics that, once you've scored, you fall a bit deeper. The pressing is not as high anymore, but we'll see how it works. I think for us, we just need to get in that 1 or 2 extra players up in attack when it comes to January, and we'll see some improvements when it comes to us also scoring goals, hopefully.
Yeah, I think with the exclusion of the very top managers in the very top sides who've got incredible squads at their disposal, and within those squads, amazing strike capabilities of superstars who, even if the team are not performing particularly well, in a moment of brilliance can suddenly create 1 or 2 or even 3 goals. I'd say that almost every manager of non-heavenly side would value defence, a really, really solid defence, because it's really difficult to take the approach every week of however many you score, we'll score more. You can't do that in the Premier League. The standard's too high. And I think many times in goal-scoring capabilities, you're often relying on individual brilliance to actually pick up the ball and put it in the back of the net from a ridiculous position where you had no right to get yourself into a goal-scoring position. And that's what the very, very best of them will do. Whereas defence is like a process and a system play. And if you are having systemic problems in your defence, that's very difficult to fix. Sometimes it's a chemistry thing. Sometimes you just don't have enough height. No matter how organised you are, you just don't have the height to combat most attacking forces. I think it takes a lot longer to get a defensive unit working. And Marco's clearly, I know he's a defender. As a player, he was a defender, so that's perhaps his focus. But I think he values a really, really strong defence above all, because clean sheets are incredibly high value. And you don't get to have week in, week out of clean sheets in the Premier League, no matter who you are. But the closer you can get to that, the more likely you are to prevail and actually survive in the Premier League. The problem we have at the moment, I said last week that we weren't scoring enough goals, but it's actually not Jimenez's problem. The people around him aren't helping him enough.
Well, what I was going to say is, I mean, it's pretty simple, really. You can't lose games if you keep clean sheets.
Yep.
If the other team doesn't score, you pick up points week in, week out. So I think that's definitely the key to it. And so in a way, I'd rather be in our position where we're able to keep the goals conceded down as much as possible. And then it's just about working out ways to score goals. And it's not like we can't score goals and we can't work out how to score goals. I think, like you said, Nick, it's about bringing in a couple of players potentially, and maybe just changing up the current formula that we've got as well. We have options coming off the bench at the moment who are performing really well. Maybe it's time for a bit of a change up, and maybe in a game like a game against Brentford, that's a good opportunity to do so, because, well, not that the pressure's off as such, but I think you're more likely to have players step up in a game like that where the crowd is really behind them. It's a really good opportunity to actually throw in, someone like a Reece Nelson. But let's chat about potential lineups for this one. So I think we're all probably in agreement that sort of the back 5 will be just the single change, which is Diop out and Anderson back in. I guess is there the potential for, Castagna or Tete, who starts at right back, Nick?
I think at the moment you can't take it away from Tete, as in he hasn't done anything to lose the position, nor did Castagna, but I think I'd still start Tete over him at this point.
I think Kenny's on fire. He's absolutely on fire. His form's great.
He's absolutely amazing moving forward as well. We used to really see it with Robinson only on the left, so that great build-up play that we have. But he's just moving the ball forward so seamlessly, and the passing game with him is going really well.
Yeah, well, I'd agree with that. And then I guess the sort of crux of our problem in recent weeks is, well, since Sasa Lukic's injury, is what do we do with the 6 and the 8? Dad, I'll throw to you first for your thoughts. Sander Berge, I think, looked better against Everton. And then do we stick with Andreas at the 8 as well?
So I think Berger has an absolute sort of streak of fortune at the moment, in that he's probably got a guaranteed 3 starts before Lukic comes back. And that in itself must be, just give him a sense of calm that he's not playing for his life in every moment, which is difficult when you're a new player still trying to fit into the system. And let's not forget how long Lukic took to impress all of us. So I frankly, I can't wait for Sasa Lukic to return. And if he's going to be out for a month or more, it's going to be a slow return. He's not going to be suddenly given the start. It's going to take a while. And then, of course, he'll get his 5th yellow card and he'll be off again for another week. But I see no chance that Berger won't play. In other words, I see every chance that he will start. And guess what? I think Andreas Pereira is going to be in the number 8.
Yeah, look, I'd probably agree with that. Nick, any further thoughts to that, or do you, I guess, agree?
I do agree. I do see it as slightly frustrating, though. Pereira, I think he's getting a bit too much hate for what he is doing, but he is not performing to the level that he has to on the pitch. It'd be great if we had someone else who can step up and take set pieces to Marco's liking, I guess, and then we could have a Wobie, Reece Nelson, Emil Smith Rowe all on the pitch at the same time, which would be amazing. But for now, I think we have to stick to Andreas Pereira, and I would agree with Sander Berge. I could see him and possibly Harrison Reed splitting a bit of time. Not that Harrison Reed will get the start, but that he would come in at some point just to switch it up a bit.
Just on the Pereira thing, I do feel sorry for the guy, because, you know, he's probably not enjoying playing number 8 as much as we're not enjoying watching it, really. I mean, I'm sure he sees himself as a number 10, and it just, has been inconsistent and hasn't really delivered. Plus, we've brought in Emil Smith Rowe, who arguably is a brighter light in that role, and certainly from the beginning of the season showed real flair. But I'm saying Andreas Pereira is probably really hating being kind of shown up in that position where he's trying to do a job for Marco, who keeps backing him. Everyone's saying he's shit in the number 8 position, and he's going, "Yeah, I know, I'm a number 10." But he's forced to play that position because I don't think Marco trusts anyone else to do it right now.
Well, I mean, I agree. I don't think we've got a number 8. I think you could slide Sander Berge into 8 potentially, but really he's kind of forced to play there in a way because, like you say, we don't have any other options. But look, I agree. I think it's maybe a fraction harsh on Pereira, and we're maybe picking out a lot of the faults that he has, and some of the errors that he's made have been thrust into the spotlight because of that. It's potentially a bit unfair on someone who's, actually starting for Brazil most international breaks, for us to be thinking that maybe he's not as good a player as, everyone else seems to think he is. Maybe we are slightly wrong there, but I think it's tough because when he's played badly, I'd say the rest of the team has played pretty poorly as well. And he's almost used as a bit of a scapegoat in a sense because we do expect a lot from him. But I'd also say for someone like Smith Rowe, for example, he's gone missing a couple of times when the team's played pretty poorly, and maybe hasn't copped quite the flack that he should. Look, I can't see a huge number of changes, to be honest. I agree Harrison Reed's a kind of an option, but Sanderberger's just got more quality on the ball, which I think is what we need. So I think that's the way we'll go. And then obviously Smith Rowe in the 10. Let's look at the wings, though. Nick, I'll throw to you first. We've got used to Iwobi on the left and Adama on the right. Reece Nelson has to be knocking on the door now. Do you think it's time?
Yes, I do. I think it's time to give him a start. And especially with the whole news that we're trying to get a permanent deal done for him, I think it's time to put that trust in him. I'd play him, and then I play him on the left. I know he can play on both sides, but I play him on the left and then Adama on the right, and just see how that works. If worst comes to worst, we have Alex Iwobi with us on the bench, and he can always come in. But I do think he has earned himself a start from what we have seen when he has come on, and I think he should get one with this game.
Dad?
Yeah, I do agree. I think I'd love to see Reece and Nelson start. I don't think there's much of a chance of Silva benching Iwobi, and I don't blame him. I think he's. I know he's had moments where he's drifted out of games, but in generally, he's a proven player. He's been very good for us. I think he's a very dangerous player. If he has a good game, and I can see against Brentford, I think he could be really valuable. The interesting thing about if you put both Nelson and Adama on the field to start, who's your impact player at that point? We're going to be relying on Harry Wilson to come on and do something, or are we really thinking that Marco would not play Iwobi for 70 or 75 minutes? I can't see it.
I wouldn't call it a winning formula as such, the Iwobi on the left and Adama on the right. It's worked well so far this season. I would love to somehow get Reece Nelson in. I just don't know how at this stage, because I think we're settled and Marco likes settled. And bringing Reece Nelson in, he's exciting and he's tricky, but is he what you want from the very first minute of a game all the way through to the end? Does he work as hard as Iwobi does going back?
That could be the biggest issue.
There's definitely a couple of things to think about that don't make it as simple a decision as, just swing Nelson in and put Iwobi on the bench. Or the other option, which Steve is saying in the live chat here, and a few other people have mentioned when we talk about Reece Nelson, is bringing Iwobi central and then having Smith Rowe maybe drop back to the 8, or maybe Iwobi goes to the 8 and Smith Rowe into the 10, and you can fit Nelson in and Pereira drops out. There's a lot of options. Black, White and Fred jumping in the live chat here mentioning Adama could probably do with a game on the bench. An attack of Smith Rowe, Iwobi and Nelson is surely worth looking at. It's interesting, 4 or 5 years ago, that was an Arsenal front three of Smith Rowe, Iwobi and Nelson, and now it could potentially be a Fulham front three. I think there's options that Marco has at hand. It's just about him actually doing it and using them. And I just don't see that happening quite yet. I think one of those players probably needs to drop a stinker before they get dropped, because Marco doesn't like dropping players who are in decent form. And Adama's scored goals and got assists this season. Iwobi scored against Everton, so he's pretty safe. Smith Rowe set up the goal, so those two are safe. Adama's probably the one on the chopping block, and he's probably been one of our better players this season. So I just feel like it's too big a stretch for a change to actually come, as much as I think we'd all like it. Nick, talking about up front, it's still got to be Jimenez, do we feel? Muniz obviously knocking on the door still and pushing for a start, but Jimenez just too good?
Yeah, as you said, Jimenez is just too good at this point. We haven't really seen it from Muniz. I know we saw the one late goal. I forget against which game it was.
Man City.
We saw one late goal from him. But other than that, he's been doing well in the build-up game, but I don't think that's what we need. If Jimenez is on sort of a goal-seeking front at the moment and has been scoring goals and getting assists, then I think we need to keep going with that, and we need to trust that that's also what the team will want and will need in the build-up when moving forward. I mean, look at the goal against Manchester City. That assist, I still can't believe happened, but we need someone like that to be able to flick it on, but also get in front of goal and hit it in the back of the net.
I think the only way that Muniz is getting on, well, starting at the moment, is if Jimenez gets injured, to be honest.
Which is how it happened last season as well.
Yeah. He hasn't done a lot wrong. His effort has been pretty great, and he's scoring goals. As I said before, I think the problem is more that we're not getting much of a contribution from elsewhere. Even if that is one goal from, the wingers and the number 10, or even one of the big men on. When's the last time we scored a goal from a set piece or a corner? Can't remember.
That is a good question. No, I can't remember either. Last season?
Definitely not this season. I don't think we've actually scored this season.
Yeah, not off the top of my head. I don't think we have scored from a set piece this season.
No, we haven't.
Which again, I mean, Pereira has, well, especially in the first sort of 5 game weeks of the season, I remember reading that Pereira had the most expected assists or something along those lines, or set up the most big chances created. And I think that was mainly down to his set piece taking. So can you put that down to the set piece taker at that point, or is it down to the ability for our players to get on the end of the ball?
I think some blame would have to be placed at Pereira's feet. I don't think his corners have been pretty average. There have been a couple of decent corners that I can think of, but generally speaking, pretty average. I can't remember that many sort of set pieces which were not corners, to be honest, in dangerous positions.
Was the Jimenez header, when he was sort of somehow managed to miss from 6 yards out, was that from a corner or a free kick?
That was a corner, I think.
It was a corner.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is a big chance created, and it's a good ball in. So we should be finishing that. And if we finish that, similarly to some of the Adama chances against Man City, if we finish that, it's probably game over. Well, maybe not quite game over, but it definitely changes the game completely.
Look, I think if you really pull this apart, if we were not creating chances, if we were leaking goals because our defence was absolutely terrible, and every week we were leaking 2 to 3 goals, right? And we couldn't create chances, that would be a really dire situation. You could have Haaland up front, but if you can't create chances and get the ball to him, you're not going to score goals. But we are creating chances, creating a lot of chances. But as we've said before, it's often characterized as our failure to take our chances. I think it's a better way of putting it is our failure to execute and actually complete those chances, which is different from, I think there's a slight difference in the meaning there. So it's a bit of a frustrating one, really, because I think there's just been a bit of a lack of quality in converting. As everyone would say, our build-up play is fantastic and it's exciting to watch. It's really, really good to watch. And then it breaks down.
No, I agree. Let's have a look at Brentford's recent form. So, going from their most recent game, a 1-1 draw, which was on, I think, Wednesday night against Sheffield Wednesday. They won that on penalties. The 4-3 victory against Ipswich with a couple of late goals in that game. 2-1 loss to Man United, a 5-3 victory against Wolves, a 1-1 draw against West Ham. Nick, the form is pretty up and down this season, let's be honest. Like we've said, a lot of goals conceded in some of those games, but a lot of goals scored too. Conceding 3 to Ipswich and 3 to Wolves, who are both teams who are currently struggling this season, kind of speaks volumes there. And conceding 2 to Man United, kind of fair enough. 1-1 against West Ham. I mean, it's kind of fair enough. I think the big thing with Brentford is they hit teams early with that goal within the first minute. What are we expecting from Brentford this weekend?
Well, one thing that I'd like to point out is they haven't kept a clean sheet this season yet. So that is one thing. They might be pushing and getting these first minute goals. But if you look at it on the flip side, they haven't kept a clean sheet. They will concede at some point during a game this season. And if we look at these last few games, it's either then that the game passes out and it's a low scoring game, 1-1, 1-2 against Man U, 1-1 against Sheffield here, or it becomes an absolute goal fest as we saw against Wolves or Ipswich, where you're just scoring from end to end and trying to outscore the other one. If I'm looking at that in regards to us, I'd say it's more likely to be one of the lower scoring games than a Wolves or an Ipswich now, just with the quality that we have in the defense and how we've struggled to sort of finish chances off out of build-up play sometimes. So I'm hoping that we can edge them out and we can pull off what Man United did against them with 2-1 victory there for Man U. But if the floodgates open, then we have to also go on the attack and try and match them toe for toe when moving forward.
I think it's a good point. The fact that we haven't scored a huge number of goals so far this season. Let's be honest, and so I expect Brentford will actually come out and attack us quite hard, knowing that the only way for them to get a win here is to basically outscore us because they do concede a lot of goals. Dad, your thoughts on how this one's going to pan out?
Well, I think conceding 3 goals to Ipswich, we've been very kind to Ipswich whenever we've talked about them, and we covered the game Fulham Ipswich. But I think conceding 3 goals to Ipswich isn't a good showing. I think that's poor. Wolves obviously aren't doing very well, but to score 5 is impressive. But you've still leaked 3 to Wolves. Have Wolves scored 3 against anybody? I doubt it. I could be wrong, but I doubt it. So you'd be thinking there have to be some goals in this game for us. There has to be. And we ought to be able to... We've definitely got a better defence than them, more reliable defence at full strength, which we will have. But I definitely don't want to get into a situation where we've got to outscore them, where they've scored a couple and we've now got to score 3. Because, yeah, if you look at the stats this year, how many times have we scored 3? Not many.
And look, like you mentioned, Nick, they're coming into this game with one of the form forwards in the league, and Brian Mbeumo is second top scorer in the Premier League this season with 8. Haaland's got 11, Cole Palmer's got 7, Chris Wood's got 7. He's definitely going to be a test for us. And on top of that, they got Johan Wisser as well, who's got 5 goals this season. For context, Fulham's top goal scorer is Jimenez with just 4 goals this season. So they've got some dangerous players in Wisser and Mbeumo. We've known that across the last couple of years every time we play against them. I guess the one positive for us is Mbeumo comes up against our fullbacks who are in very, very good form this season so far. That's definitely one thing that I feel almost not quite as worried about. He's going to be coming up against Robinson, who will have the pace to be able to keep up with him. I feel like Wisser is a good player, but I feel like having Anderson and Bassi, who sort of offer 2 slightly different things in defence, will definitely work in our favour as well. And we know how good Kenny Tete is one-on-one when it comes to handling players out wide. He's going to have probably Lewis Potter out wide that he's going to be dealing with for the afternoon. So I feel like our defence has the ability to hold out Brentford. It's just about now for me, if we can actually score the probably 2 goals that we need to close this game out. Nick, I'll throw to you first. Give us your prediction for the game.
I say it's going to be 2-1, hopefully, to Fulham. I predict 2-1 to Fulham. I say hopefully because we have to find that second goal. I would, however, take a draw here. If you offered me a draw before the game right now, even though it is Brentford, I would take it. Just with Mbeumo scoring in every single game, they've only failed to score in one game so far this season against Liverpool. We just know that we are going to concede at some point, and I don't know that we can match the scoring enough to pull out a full win here. But I'd take a draw. I think that we will find that second goal, though, I believe.
Dad?
Well, I'm looking back at the Brentford form, and I can't get past Wolves putting, 3 past them and Ipswich putting 3 past them. And I'm thinking, well, if those two sides can put 3 past Brentford, surely we can. But I'm a little conflicted because I'm not that confident that we will score 3 goals. And then I'm thinking, what would be really great for a turnaround in form and just a great one for the fans is if it's 1-1 and in the 95th minute we nick it and break their hearts. I mean, that would be beautiful, and maybe just the turn of momentum we really need. So I'd take that kind of 2-1, but I'm hoping for a 3-1.
Yeah, I'm going to go with 2-0 Fulham here, and I think this Brentford side is scoring a lot of goals, but I feel like going into a game like this, Marco would know that and would actually spend a lot of time having basically the same conversation we're having. If we can stop them from scoring, we're going to win this game because they are going to concede goals. I'm feeling, maybe like a 2-0 win here. I think we're going to shut them out, and I can see us exposing them because I think they're going to come at us hard, and there's going to be opportunities to get in behind. I see Adama having a bit of a field day, to be honest, and I see Reece Nelson coming in late and having an impact and potentially setting up another goal on the break down the track. So I'm going for our first win over Brentford since 2022 and a 2-0 win. Fingers crossed, because let's be honest, it could go anywhere this game. It could be a similar sort of scoreline to those Wolves and Ipswich games with multiple goals being scored, but I am hopeful that we can actually pull off a result here. Guys, I think we can probably wrap it up there. It's been good to get back after the disappointing result against Everton and be able to actually talk about an exciting upcoming game. I'm going to have to set a bunch of alarms to make sure I set up for this one being a 4 a.m. kickoff here in Perth, but hopefully we're able to get a good result and make the very, very early morning start worthwhile. Nick, thank you very much for joining us today. Really great to have you on the podcast. And as we said at the start as well, really good to have you as part of the That's So Craven community on the Discord too.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And Dad, as always, thank you very much.
You're welcome. You don't have to be such a gentleman, Nick, but we appreciate that you are. Very good.
Thanks to everyone who's joined in on the live stream. Thanks to everyone who continues to support us. Please do make sure you subscribe to the podcast, share it with every other Fulham fan you know. Make sure that people know about That's So Craven and able to listen along. Thank you again to everyone. And as always, come on, you Whites.